The Legally Brief podcast is produced by the law offices of Judy Saunders.
Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be sitting down with everyone for a next episode of the Legally Brief podcast, and delighted to have with us today John Plaugic. John is a world-class, I have to say that, coach. He's a goalie training coach. He runs his own shop, his own business here in New Jersey. And I, of course, don't want to belabor any bio or intro to John, because I want him to tell everyone directly about his wonderful career. And then I'm going to jump in from time to time, kind of lead the questions and talk a little bit more. So John, let's just kick it right off. I don't want to keep listeners waiting in anticipation. Can you just start off like we do most shows, just talking about a little bit about yourself? Tell the audience who you are, how you got into coaching, and your early athletic career.
Sure, that'd be great. Well, I want to thank you for having me. It's exciting to be on a podcast and to be with someone I've known for a couple years, and actually to work and coach with your children. It's a full circle, so I'm excited to be on today. So I'm John Plaugic. I'm the owner of Modern Goalkeeper. It's a goalkeeper specific training school. We have locations all over the tri-state area, and we specialize in just teaching young goalkeepers or youth goalkeepers the proper way to develop as a youth athlete. Our focus is really bringing them from a foundation level and teaching them all the necessary skills so they can have some options to potentially play professionally when they're older, or piggyback that into a collegiate career. I've been coaching since 2009. That's when I established Modern Goalkeeper, and we've been growing since I was the initial member and owner, and now we have 7 coaches working with us, and everything's been excellent. So we have a great platform for the players to develop in a safe and progressive environment.
Awesome. So that's exciting to hear. And we're going to loop back and talk about modern goalkeeping. But I want to take listeners back a couple years, maybe a decade or two. I know that you, anyone that's looking, could probably say you're in your early 20s or so. But if we take everyone back to your early career, it's my understanding, and I know that our listeners want to hear about how you even got into the sport. A lot of our listeners themselves, they are either have children that are in sports, or they love sports, they're a fan of it, some sport or the other. Can you talk about your early interaction with sports growing up in your professional career?
Yeah. So I grew up in Kearney, New Jersey. It's right near Giant Stadium, and it's a soccer town. So I grew up in an area that soccer was the main sport. But just like any American kid, I played baseball. I played Little League, Pony League baseball. I played soccer. I also played, little sports with my friends, like football out with my friends and basketball out with my friends. So I was born in 1985. I'm 34 right now. And the American athlete then was you played multiple sports in different seasons, and then you started to specialize as you got older. So as a kid, I was playing football in the street with my friends. I was playing Little League, Pony League, All-Star baseball, soccer at the highest level for club soccer at that time. I also played ice hockey from when I was 13 to 18. So I had a bunch of different sports I played, and that really developed my youth career. And as I got older, soccer was the one sport I loved, and I loved being a goalkeeper. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna do this full time. So I stopped playing baseball, I stopped playing ice hockey, and I just focused on soccer, and was able to do well enough where I had a very good high school career. I got a college scholarship to a Division I institution. I played college soccer, and after college soccer, I played professional soccer in Norway for a little while. And I really loved the game and loved the position, and that led to me starting Modern Goalkeeper. Upon graduating college, I had a business opportunity to invest in a new venture, which was an athletic training facility So it was a brick and mortar location with a turf training area, all modern strength and conditioning equipment, locker rooms, video analysis. And we started this in 2007, 2008. And as a 23-year-old, I was an investor and part owner, and the youngest of any of the owners, investors, and employees. So I decided to take that option rather than to go back and continue my professional career in Norway, where I had options to play in the third division and the second division as a 23-year-old American, which took a ton of work.
Wow.
And it was a tough decision, but I thought, hey, am I really going to make a run at this and be able to play in the Premier League in Norway as a late developer, as an American goalkeeper? Or can I really make a run at being a professional coach and being one of the best American goalkeeper coaches at my age? And I decided to do that. And that's what started my coaching career.
Wow. So I want to take you back because you have such an interesting history. Can you talk to us a little bit about, if you get down deep into, as you were transitioning, so as you were going from, you said that you were playing multiple sports, the kind of the way how things used to be before we specialized so early in youth sports. Tell me a little bit about what, if any, interaction your parents or influence that your parents had on your decision to play soccer or just to specialize it, so to speak. Was it solely your decision? Did you feel a lot of influence from outside forces, from parents, from coaches? How did you come to that? Or was it just your sole love of the game?
So I think, playing multiple sports as a kid, it's great because you meet new friends, you meet new people. And I grew up in a small town where the same people were on the same teams almost. So you played Little League baseball, you were playing with or against your friends in just the town. And then travel soccer, I was playing for Kearney Thistle, which was the soccer club you wanted to play for in Kearney. A ton of history there. And we were playing with our friends. And that group of friends actually played together since we were 9 years old. And we graduated high school, and our junior year won a state championship and did very, very well through our high school career at Kearney High School. And that was part of the culture in the town. So you grew up playing multiple sports. And we had some of my buddies that played soccer and baseball with us. Some of us just stopped playing baseball and focused on soccer. And some were the other way around. They stopped playing soccer and focused on baseball. And we had a nice group of athletes there where, like I said, our junior year, we won a state championship for Kearney High School in soccer. And our junior year in the spring, all of our buddies that were playing baseball made it to the state championship in baseball. So unfortunately they lost, but they got there and had a great run. So you saw what your friends were doing when you were growing up, and some people started to love baseball a little more and some started to love soccer a little more, and that naturally evolved that way. But
that's what it sounds like to me, John. It sounds like you're saying that it was a more organic decision that led you to soccer. So tell me, would you say, is this a fair statement? Would you say that kind of your starting to specialize in soccer grew organically versus, say, mom or dad telling you this is what you need to do, or this is a way for you to get into college? Would you say that it was more organic?
I think it's more organic then, because now so I'm a first generation college graduate. My parents didn't go to college. So my father's a police officer and my mother was an office manager. So I wouldn't say going to college was a big deal, but it was something new for our family. So we didn't have the pressure some kids have now. Now there's generations that everyone has been to college, and it's kind of like a simple notch on your belt that you have to go. But we didn't have that pressure. Things just happen naturally. Of course, your parents have been there and always want to help. But my parents, like my father played football growing up. My mom did track and basketball. So they didn't pressure me to play those sports. They said, hey, play whatever you want. As I said, we grew up in Kearney where soccer was the main sport, but we still all played multiple sports. And I think there was support from the parents, but there was never any pressure like, hey, John, you're better at soccer, you have to do soccer because you may love baseball more, but you're never going to have a chance as a center fielder or a pitcher.
Okay.
There was never those discussions, but I think those discussions happen now, unfortunately.
So
you
can we
have some
talk about
kids.
that a little bit? I don't want to cut you off because you're dropping so many great tension points that I think so many of the listeners would love your guidance or your opinion on. So let's just talk about for a minute that whole idea of pressure on the modern athlete, the modern youth athlete. Can you give parents maybe and athletes maybe some tips, maybe some ways to, or putting context around that pressure, how to deal with it, whether it should even be a factor, or how have you seen that come up, and what advice do you have to give?
So I think it's difficult, right? So the United States is a little different than how other countries across the world handle sport. And I can mention that because I've traveled to other places and lived in other countries where you see the difference. So here it's very, very important you win, you're successful, you score a ton of points, you score a ton of goals, you break records, you're an All-American, you're All-State, you're whatever, which is great, right? But there needs to be a focus on development. And where other countries outside the US are very strong is they take a youth player, whichever sport it is, and they know there's a progression from here and it goes all the way up. So you need to start in the foundation level and then build that up until they become, maybe they do become a pro athlete or a very high level athlete. But there's not so many jumps or blips in the radar of pressure because you let nature and this is where we bring into coaching and professional coaching in a professional environment. You let the environment do its job and work over time. And I think here there's a little bit more pressure and a little bit more push when that's not necessarily the most important timing, so you can't force the horse to go drink the water, right? So sometimes you need to let it naturally happen. And
I love that. I love what you said.
I feel here it's sometimes there's too much pressure in the wrong time of a child's career, or a wrong time in their development years, when sometimes you just have to put your arm around your child and say, hey, it's okay, man. And just let them play and let them grow up and let them have fun and let them fail and let them be successful. And then there's other times when then you have to step in and be the adult and be a motivator and be a leader, but you need to strike that balance so you're not overwhelming your kids, because that happens a lot more. I've seen that happen a lot more in the United States, especially the tri-state area, where there's just a lot of pressure when there doesn't need to be pressure. You don't need to win a 12-year-old championship. It doesn't. It's great. It's a great feeling, and you want the kids to do that. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean much. The experience is what means much. The trophy is not what is very important. It's the ride. It's the experience. So,
and I think that will be helpful because you're standing in a position where you've kind of taken that journey, so to speak. You've gone from casual youth player enjoying. You've gone through the collegiate experience at a D1 school. You've played professionally. So that I think that's really offers some comfort, some relief, and some validation for parents to understand that the pressure to succeed, it's not necessary. Talk for a little, you use that word, let environment do its job. Tell parents, what do you mean by that?
I think you need to as a professional coach, we build our training environment so it works like a machine. There's all these moving parts behind the scenes, but as a parent or a player, you may not notice them. But that's our job as a professional coach, is to set up it's like building a house, right? You have all these functional things you need to put together. So when you're home, the toilet works, the sink works, the oven works, the refrigerator works. And all these things can work together or work in unison for the common goal of having the house or having the family function in this space. So we need to keep in mind that we're setting up all these things so they work together. And that's where I think there's some trouble with within youth sports. There's sometimes compartmentalization. They put things in compartments and don't have the idea of all these things need to work together.
Everything needs to come together. Give an example of that. So if you could use maybe a fictitious player and how would you implement that at Modern Goalkeeping? So
let's say we take a 10-year-old, right? So the youngest we'll ever take a goalkeeper is like 9 or 10 years old. So they're old enough where the physical demands they can handle and the psychological demands they can handle the coaching aspects, because being a goalkeeper is difficult. You're giving up goals. Your teammates are complaining to you if you're having a bad day. Mm-hmm. So you have to start with teaching the fundamentals and teaching them how to dive, how to handle the ball in a safe manner. And then you're worried about, okay, after we teach them everything, how are we going to make them more efficient and effective when they're playing? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as a coach, for example, if they're 12 years old, the goal gets bigger. So when they're playing, usually they'll start playing 7-on-7, then they'll play 9-on-9 and 11-on-11 on a full field. Now, when they go to a full field, the goal is 8 feet high. But if you're 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're 5'5" or 5'2", or maybe you happen to be 6 foot because of how you're growing, the game's not fair. The game's not fair to you at that point in your growth and that point of your development, but we can't worry about that then. We have to stick to what our developmental plan is and say, hey, these are the things we have to teach at your age so you learn. If they're scoring a goal directly over your head because right now you're 5'2", but we know in 4 years from now you're going to be 6'2", we can't change how we're coaching or change how we're teaching and interacting with our players because they may be giving up goals or making mistakes when they're 12 years old. So knowing that, right, if we look at everything from a holistic approach from the crow's nest, it's okay. Like, it's okay for those things to happen. It's okay to lose. It's okay to give up goals that are over your head or give up goals that as a 12-year-old, it's okay. It's not important because we have other things to focus on, which is teaching to play safely and handle the ball the right way and make sure mentally, psychologically, and physically we know what to do and what to do when the game's going on.
John, am loving. I'm just going to break in because you keep saying such an important point: the psychological and the physical development, and how that plays in to the growth of an athlete and how a coach can deal with that. So I would love for you to touch on that. So the psychological, the physical, the development of a child. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I want to know, how did you feel growing up? Did you feel like you had a good experience with your coaches once you became more serious, once you were specializing in soccer? How did you feel your psychological and your physical development was handled on that kind of when the specialty and then also in college? Talk about that experience for yourself. Do you think it was handled appropriately?
I guess the professional coaching world is much more advanced than it was when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, you had coaches that have played, maybe they played at the high school or played collegiately, or maybe they were professional athletes, but being a player, a former player, does not mean you're going to be a good coach, right? So we have some world-class players, like if you look at Maradona for soccer, right? Like, he's a legend, but he's a terrible coach, even though everyone loves him. We love the guy, hell of a player, but he's not a coach. So you look at those things, and me as a youth player, and this is part of why I take coaching so seriously. If I look back at how I was coached and how I was developed and how everything worked out for me, I'd be disappointed. I wasn't treated particularly well. Maybe because I was a goalkeeper, maybe because I was chubby as a kid and not as athletic as I became to be. And I was a late developer. So at 14, I was maybe bang on average. And then at 20, 22, all the players that were better than me at the youth level, I was better than all of them because of the amount of work I put in. But I recall a lot of situations as a youth player where the coaching skills I use now of how to talk to a player and when to talk to them, when to do a coaching correction and when to let them do it and let them just try to do it on the fly, when to be a motivator and when to light a flame under their ass, but then also when to be a mentor and a friend and have some compassion and show them you care. Whether they are very good or not very good, you're there and you're supporting them. And as a youth player, I don't recall that happening. There's all these skills you need as a professional coach, and if you're ticking boxes of all the skills you'd need to be a top level coach, and let's say there's 12 choices, I remember growing up and maybe the coaches we had maybe had 6 or 7 of those boxes checked. And a lot of them were playing experience, coaching experience, things like that. But dealing with an athlete psychologically, you wouldn't mark that box. Developmental coach, developmental leader, one to motivate kids positively. I wasn't a person that, if someone told me you stink and they're yelling, I would agree with them, right? I'm not the type of person that's motivated by someone telling me, hey, you stink and you're lazy. You need to work harder. That's not my personality. I would need someone to take me over and say, hey, John, you made a couple errors this way. You made a mistake. And this is how we're going to teach you so it doesn't happen again. And this is what we're going to do to help you get better in these situations. And there is an ebb and flow. There's times when you go and you are talking to the player and you say, okay, this is where we made mistakes. This is what we need to do. But then you reinforce that with some other types of motivation. And then the athlete wants to work for you. They want to work hard. They believe in you as a coach. And now you have that camaraderie between a coach and an athlete. That's what develops world-class athletes. And you need to know how to do that as a coach and as a motivator. If not, you're going to know the game and maybe be successful how you set up a team, but you're not going to be a player developer. And
That's great.
I remember as a kid, there were times when I had a pretty strong mentality, even though I was very shy as a kid, so I can deal with a lot and was very quiet. But if I was the person I've turned into now because of these experiences, I would have verbalized more of how I felt. That I wasn't happy. I didn't feel like I was being treated fairly, and some of those things are missing in youth sports, and that brings the pressure on a youth athlete.
That brings the pressure on a youth athlete. So wait a minute, before I dive in with another question, tell me so are you saying that kind of the failure, maybe the lack, maybe it's not even intentional, the not being aware of understanding the psychological and maybe even the physical development of a child puts the burden on the child to try to figure out how to manage, when the coach is upset? Is that what you mean by puts the burden on the player?
Yeah, I think so. If a child makes a mistake in sports, the coach's job is to dissect what happened, what went wrong, and how am I going to teach you to get better so this situation doesn't come up as often. And then how to deal with it psychologically and how to speak to the athlete with feedback, right? And then motivation so we can get better. If those things are missing, you become a bit of a dictator. But if you're not capable of saying, this is what you did wrong, but then teaching how to do it correctly, then you're not coaching. If you're saying, this is what you did wrong, and you tell the kid to fix it, you have to give them the tools to fix it, and you have to show them. And then after showing them and teaching them how to do it, now you have to motivate them to go do it on their own when you're coaching on the sideline and the game is going on. So these are things where when you're developing athletes, you need to know when to reel them in and when it's going to be very much teaching and very much explaining and demonstrating and modeling. And then you have to let them go out there and try it and fail and support them. Because as a coach, you're not winning the game or you're not losing the game. The players are the ones winning and losing the game. It's your job to oversee that you put them in the most successful environment or set them up as successful, to be successful, excuse me. And that goes with the technical skills, the tactical skills, the social skills, the physiological skills, the psychology, right? You have to bring all those things in so the players can be successful when they compete.
So you were talking earlier about some of the boxes. You know, if there, you kind of gave a hypothetical, if there's 12 boxes or sort of thing, 12 criteria that a coach should have. So answer this for me. If a parent who is starting out new in this more competitive youth environment, and they're listening, they're looking for, I'm considering this trainer, I'm considering this team, this coaching staff for my child, or even this sport. What are kind of some of those, maybe the 3 or 4 things that you would say, look, young athlete, look, parent, this is what you should look for in this sporting experience, in this coaching experience from this coach? What are some of the things you would tell a parent to look for, or even an athlete?
I think just like you would hire anyone, like someone to paint your house or someone to build your home or fix your car, you want to look at a professional that has experience and has done things that are relative to your child or their sport or that sort of market. So you're going to get feedback from past players and past coaches or colleagues where like, hey, this guy's really good and this is why, and we trust him and we believe in him because we've seen it. So that's really important, but you need to look at all aspects, right? There's the physical aspect, right? Where is a coach capable of teaching them the physical things they need to know for the sport? The technical aspect, the skills. Tactical is when the game is happening, what things we need to teach within the game. Social, how the coach interacts with players, because as a youth coach, you have to be able to talk to the players and interact with them, and know when it's time to be the leader and the guy on the top of the totem pole, and then know when it's time to be in the mix with the players. Like, hey, we're all together here, and the psychological part. So you need to find a balance of finding a coach that has all of those things, and then also you have to know who your child is. If your child is going to be motivated by someone maybe yelling at them on the side and that motivates your child, then maybe that coach in that part of their life would make a ton of sense. And then maybe there's a child that needs someone to talk to them and explain and model things and educate and be an educator. Maybe that's the choice you have for your child in that particular sport. So as parents, we need to know our kids and what they're like, what their personality is like, and try to match that with the coaches the best we can, because we can't always order off a menu when we're choosing coaches for youth sports. But you have to keep that in mind and be, like you would say, an educated consumer, right? You have to know what you're buying or what you're investing your time into, and then finding what's best. You know, I wear Nike shoes because they fit my foot better than Adidas, but I love Adidas. I love how they look, but and I love how Nike looks, but I'm going to choose Nike because it's functional and works well for me. So
Right.
that's what we have to look at as a parent and as an athlete, where let's find an environment that makes sense for me personally.
So talk to us, Don, a little bit about what is your approach. And I want you, when you answer the question, I want to even bring in your experience as a professional athlete or as even a collegiate athlete, thinking about those times to answer this question. How much or how important do you think input from the athlete? How much consideration do we give to that? Should the coach be the one that's saying, no, look, I have the view of everything going on, listen to me? Or are we, how much credence, how much validity should we give to the athlete? If the athlete is saying, no, I can't do this, or this skill is not right for me, or this is just not working. How do you approach that? How did you approach that? And how do you approach that now as a coach?
It's important you get feedback from your players. What's also important is there's not one decision maker. So if you look at pro sports, there's usually multiple coaches. So for soccer, there's usually a staff of 4 or 6. So there's the head coach or the manager, there's 2 assistants, there's a goalkeeper coach, and then there's a fitness coach, and so on and so forth. But when you make, the manager or the head coach makes all the final decisions, but they talk to their staff together. Hey, maybe I'm missing something, right? I know when I was coaching at St. Benedict's, I was the goalkeeper coach, and that was my main focus, assistant coach and goalkeeper coach. But I knew my place. There was a head coach, there was 2 assistants, and I was an assistant and goalkeeper coach. So we all gave feedback to each other, and everyone understood what each coach's mentality was and what the ideas were. And then the manager or the head coach would make the decisions, but he wouldn't just make them on his own. He would make them because he consulted his staff. And then also you bring in the opinion of the players, or maybe the captains of the team, and you get feedback from your players, and you gauge everything based on the professional environment you're in. Because some players are going to complain because they're not playing or they're not happy, or there's always people that are very happy, and then there may be some players that are unhappy because not everyone can play at the same time. But you have to look at all these things, chat with your staff, and say, okay, how are we going to handle this situation that's best for the players and the coaching staff so everyone can be successful and work in harmony? And that's why player feedback is important, and it needs to be considered. And as a coach, we can't give players way too much power, and we can't give them too little power, right? We have to make sure we're all working together because we're all trying to achieve a common goal. And the feedback from your fellow coaches or in your staff, and then your feedback from your captains and other players, you just gain perspective of what the environment is really like, and you can improve that way and make it an optimal coaching environment for the kids.
All right. You're giving us so much, and I have 2 more questions. I know that we're all busy. You have things that you have to do. I don't want to hold you up, but I want to know if you can give some insight, since you've lived it, into how we can manage the matriculation into college on scholarships. So giving you a scenario, you have an athlete, now we start, looking at, very young high school, there's that pressure on an athlete. They're thinking about college, they're thinking about the scholarship. How would you say that parents and athletes handle that? Would you say that they just continue to enjoy the sport, and if the scholarship comes, it comes? Are there any insights you can give from your own experience, and then how you're seeing the pressure of getting a college scholarship based on a sport, how that's being played out now?
Yeah, I think every sport's a little different. So college football is insane with how they do recruiting. And if you look at the women's game, women's recruiting starts a year and a half earlier than men's does. So you have some female soccer players that are getting recruited and signing national letters of intent as a 14-year-old, a freshman in high school, a sophomore in high school. So it gets a little kooky, and every sport is different. There's a ton of money in NCAA football, NCAA basketball. That recruiting patterns are totally different there than men's soccer and women's soccer. The funding is like it's a joke. Like the cornerback coach is making $300,000 and the head soccer coach at a Big East institution is making $200,000. And the cornerback coach is like the 9th assistant. So with the money that's involved too, it gets a little bit crazy. So I guess it depends what you're looking to do, right? If you're an American and you're going to play American football, you're doing baseball, you're doing basketball, the path to a pro environment here for the big American sports is very easy. If you play at a big football school, you have a chance to be in the NFL. If you play at a big basketball school, you have a chance to go to the NBA. And baseball, same thing. Whereas soccer, it's a little more difficult. Even though we have the MLS, the pathway is a little more difficult and the rules are a little different with collegiate sports. And the funding and the money aspect is much different. What stadiums you're playing in, what resources the schools and institutions have to give to the athletes. And that's not even touching into the illegal recruiting practices that happen with the major sports in the United States. So I think you have to look at what sport you're playing, right? So if I'm playing football or baseball or softball or basketball, this is kind of going to be my pathway to get to pro sports. And in the US, that's through collegiate sports. If you're doing soccer, you could probably use collegiate sports as a stepping stone because you would want to try to get into a professional environment when you're 16 or 18, or go overseas and try to do that at 16 or 18 if you can. So you have to look at what's important to you and your family because there's an academic aspect as well. So if you're able to go to school and get a degree and play sports and do well and get a scholarship and get a free education and have the opportunity to play professional sports, if that works for you and your family, then that's great. If you're all gung-ho on going straight to being a professional athlete, then maybe the academic component is different. So you have to see what you're trying to achieve and where you want to live when you go to school, what you want to study, and how you're going to leverage that with the financial package you're getting from each school. But it has to be a happy medium. I want to live over here and go to school here. I love the weather. I'm going to do well academically here. They have something I want to study. The sports component works well for me. And then everything meshes into real life and it becomes comfortable and you're at a place you really want to be. You see some athletes chasing athletic scholarships and they go to a place where they just hate being there. I've had a couple that they've gotten a ton of money. The denomination was double or triple what they got at other places, but it was a place they didn't really want to live. They didn't really want to go to school there, but they wanted to say, hey, I'm getting an 80% scholarship. I'm saving my parents a lot of money and I'm going to be a D1 athlete and being paid to play almost at this level. So it depends what you want to do and what
Right.
Makes sense for you and your family. But
Sounds
this
like
decision, am I going straight? Do I want to go straight? My goal is I have to be a pro. Or is my goal an academic and athletic route? And then you can choose what's best for you and your family, but you cannot always just choose a financial choice because it may not be in the best interest of the family or the athlete.
Okay, so it really sounds like you're talking about kind of a theme that you're giving to us of balance, that regardless, this whole journey through youth athletic sports, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance in the coaches that you pick. They have to not only develop a player physically, psychologically, they have to also do it tactically. They have to be trained. And then also for parents that are starting out this journey or midway through, and an athlete that's now looking or thinking about college, it just isn't the money. You have to think about your end goal, what you're looking for, and ultimately there has to be a balance. So I think that that will be useful to individuals thinking about worrying about scholarships, because there is that pressure. We know there's that pressure. You talked a little bit about earlier how for you it was more organic when you started to specialize versus in today's environment where there's more external influences on an athlete. So I guess that maybe it would be good to end and to what would you then leave our listeners with in reference to how you at Modern Goalkeeping, what is your philosophy? What is that philosophy so that parents can know what to look for in any sport, be it gymnastics, if it's swimming, what should they look for? What should this athletic journey ultimately give them?
With any sports, you're going to learn intangible skills that are going to help you in life, because not everyone's going to be a professional athlete, right? But they may be a business owner, they may be an attorney, they may be a doctor, they may be a teacher. They may go into different ways of making a living as an adult. But I think you need to look at the process and how you're teaching or what you're learning during the process of sports. So if you're playing sports from 10 years old to you're 22, what intangible skills do you learn as an athlete that are going to help you in real life, right? If you're going to be a pro athlete, right, you need to be in an environment where you're learning and developing each year, each week, each month, and setting a progression. We call it periodization in soccer. It's training periodization of what we do week 1 and what we do week 36. And for my business, for Modern Goalkeeper, our training platform is usually youth players from 9 years old and we have professional athletes as well. We're going to take them at a certain age and we're going to develop them over a 5, 7, 9, 10-year period. So when they can peak at the right time, and they can peak and have an opportunity to play at the highest level they want. But you're teaching all these little skills while that's happening. Of course, the skills in each sports and the tactical knowledge of what to do when, and the technical of how to do this action, right? How to kick the ball, how to dive for this shot, how to throw the ball, how to get your positioning. But you're also teaching them how to be on time, how to be organized, how to be professional, how to interact with each other in a professional environment, how to motivate each other, how to be a good friend, a good teammate, how to work within a team, how to work within a group. It can't be me all the time. Those are the intangible things you're teaching. And then I also think, and this is a little bit on left field here, but as American athletes, we really push our kids that you have to go to college at 18 or 19, you have to go to school. And if you look at some people that are very good at certain things, maybe they're an excellent chef, they're an excellent painter, they're an entrepreneur, they may not have that. They may take the beaten path to get where they are because they're exceptional individuals and they think differently than other people. So we have to know how we can help and how we can motivate these people, because not everyone is going to work a 9-to-5 job and get an education and use their degree to work for someone or work in an office or work in a professional environment. Maybe they're going to, design a car or design a new skateboard or be an artist or something. So we have to fill the kids with ideas of what they can do through sport. What intangible skills can we teach them through sport? And like I said, responsibility and just interacting with each other. And then also the selfish part of, what do I personally need to work on to be the best I can be? And you have to use all those things and gain all those different attributes through your career so you can be successful.
And I love that. I think that is the perfect note to end this on. It really gives me the takeaway that in youth competitive sports, it sounds like we really need to capitalize, all capital letters, underscore, highlight the word youth. They are really leading the journey, and we as fans, supporters, coaches, and advocates, we're there to support them.
It's Modern Goalkeeper. You can find us at Modern Goalkeeper Training on Instagram. On our website, it's moderngoalkeepertraining.com. And we have, you can find us over the internet on YouTube. If you look up Modern Goalkeeper Training Systems, we have a bunch of YouTube videos as well. And of course, you can always reach out to me directly. I'm always available for a phone call or a text message at 201-741-0221. I want it to be known that I want to be active. I want to be active with any athletes or any family members, and be here as a guide or to help. So it's important that I'm accessible, and it could be as quick as a phone call or a text message, and you're talking to a real person. There needs to be a personal touch of hey, you can, even a reinsurance call, like, hey, we're here to help and give some insight.
A real person, a real expert, and a real athlete. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate the time.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Okay. All right. Talk soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Legally Brief podcast. Remember to join Judy and fellow listeners at the Legally Brief Facebook group.